Vaughan, Cindy, where did his book go?
What book? Oh, not that bloody thing again.
Is there anything in there that nobody should see?
His house is like our house.
I don't want anything popping out and giving anybody a heart attack or anything. All right. Vaughan wrote this book. I talked about it last time. I'm going to talk about it again. Being Human, A Guide to Metaphysics. It's a great book. Vaughan covers a lot of ground. He breaks it down. He writes it in a way that almost anybody from any field can pick this up and understand what he's saying. And it begins with a look at how we think and how we process the information that society is continually pushing at us. And then he kind of breaks it down and he talks in, kind of summarizes different fields of metaphysics. It's a really great work, and one of the things that I really enjoy about it is Vaughan's great sense of humor. He's able to take something that could be a dry subject and really make it enjoyable reading. I really enjoyed reading this book. So I recommend it, and Vaughan, where can they get copies if they want them?
If they must have them, I would say go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com, or sometimes they're at our price, whatever. So.
Okay. Yeah. So, Vaughan Wynne-Jones, our resident sage, metaphysician, and all kinds of other wonderful things. Really pleased that he has agreed to talk with us, and we're going to go over, and he's going to talk to you about the Qabbalah, which is a very ancient wisdom system, and it covers a lot of ground, and it has a lot of different applications. And I can't think of a better person than Vaughan to help us and explain to us some of the different ways in history this has been used, applied, looked at, and how it relates to consciousness as we understand it.
Oh, okay, yes. Thank you for that, John. Yeah, you've heard nothing yet. You can clap afterwards if you want. But all right. Thank you, John. Really, I appreciate it. And I'm so grateful for all of you to come out today. I wrote this 7 years ago, as Bill can attest to. And the reason that there hasn't been another one since is because there's all kinds of things that I've been interested in, but I haven't found the specific subject, or hadn't found the specific subject that I really wanted to put my heart and soul into. The other problem is that I'm just damn lazy, and I need to have motivation to actually write something down. So this helps me because what John asked me to do was to explain the Qabbalah as a map of consciousness. Now, here's the problem with the Qabbalah. I want to read you a little email that's a typical discussion about the Qabbalah. Have you considered that the Sephira, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod represent a secondary reflection of the supernal triad, and if we assume a Saturn influence for Darth, then we can see how Binah and Chokmah might represent the Cauda and Caput Draconis aspects of Yesod, visualized as Uranus and Neptune. Might we not also then assume that Kether takes on the destructive creative aspects of Pluto, or am I way off base here? Alchemically speaking, this allows us to place the heavy elements above the abyss whilst maintaining symmetry. So, as you can imagine, that, well, I mean, anybody know what that meant? I mean, unfortunately, there's just a lot of nouns there that, yeah, I unfortunately do know what it meant because I wrote it, but the problem is that the Kabbalah is tied into obviously Hebrew. Well, not obviously, I haven't explained that yet. It's tied into Hebrew, astrology, tarot, the name of God, the breath of God. It's tied into alchemy. It's tied into the planets. It's tied into Greek. It's tied into all kinds of things. And to talk about tarot, to talk about the Kabbalah without talking about those subjects creates quite a challenge. But it's a useful challenge and a wonderful exercise. So hopefully what we have here is something that's written in plain English. And by the end of it, my goal is that you will know the basic story of the Kabbalah, understand the concept of duality as it applies to life in the Kabbalah, understand the principle of the four worlds, understand the pillars and what they represent. None of this I've shown you yet. Understand the machinery of the universe, and be able to perform a simple manifestation exercise.
Do we have an exam?
There can be one if you like, yes, I'll be happy to grade it for you. I would oh, thank you, that was nice. It's funny how you don't know there's a noise until it's gone sometimes. Yeah, my second wife was like that, actually. Oh no, sorry. I would ask if you could, there's going to be a few short meditation pieces. It's more a relaxation exercise than anything else, but if you could turn off or put your cell phones on vibrate, that would be helpful for those things. Okay, so what is the Qabbalah? Anyone want to offer a 10-word sentence on what the Qabbalah might be? Anyone? Who's heard the phrase Qabbalah before? Okay, we all have. Oh yes, because you went to the meetup group and saw the group. Yeah. So no, I don't. See, this is why I don't sit on chairs when I talk. Okay, so the Qabbalah basically means receiving. It's an oral tradition originally handed down as part of Jewish mysticism. Jewish mysticism examines the pieces of the Old Testament. It examines various rabbinic texts. And what's interesting about the Qabbalah and why it fascinates me so much is that the world we live in today, where we're starting to have an understanding, the classic Newtonian world that we live in with chairs that you can kick and things like this, has something underpinning it which we refer to as quantum physics, which acts in a very strange way. Things have to be observed to exist, for example. Until you look at something, it exists in this weird superposition where all probabilities and possibilities are out there. The Qabbalah looks at quantum physics without realizing that that's what it's doing. And it kind of makes sense to me that it happens that way because the Jewish mystics of old are just like us, just 2,000 or 3,000 years earlier. They still had the same brain, and half the quantum physicists today will tell you that the other half are crazy. And most people believe that quantum physics is pretty much metaphysics anyway, because a lot of it is hypothetical. There's some theory, but not a lot of it is useful necessarily yet. But the concepts are very fascinating, and they seem to have some validity. So the Qabbalah has a lot of the same pieces to it. So it doesn't surprise me that this concept came up 2,000 or 3,000 years ago without having any means to experiment or test with it. Anyway, what I would like to do first is tell you a little story. Oh, and before we do that, it's spelt with a K here. The Qabbalah is also spelt with a C, and it's spelt with a Q. It's spelt with less letters, it's spelt with more letters. Hi. The reason for that is that it's a Hebrew word, and we don't know how to spell it. It uses the letters Kof, Beth, and Lamed, okay, in Hebrew. In fact, we're not even sure how to pronounce it. Hebrew words, Hebrew is spoken today, but the way it was spoken back then, we're not really sure. And they have consonants, but not really any vowels. There's like a yod that they drop in there to make a vowel sound. But like the name Yod-Heh-Voh-Heh, or Jehovah, or Yahweh, we see how it's written with this little, in fact, I'll write it for you real quick, with a little dinky yod character, and then you have this kind of hey thing like that, and then you have a little thing going down like that, and then you have another hey, Yod-Heh-Voh-Heh, which is the name of God, supposedly. But it could be Jehovah, it could be Yahweh, it could be Yahuwah, for all we know. We don't know, But the pronunciation will work either way. So we call it the Qabbalah, but we don't know if that's how they pronounced it. Now, the Qabbalah can be a complex system, but there is a very, very simple story behind it, which I want to share with you now. In the beginning, there wasn't anything at all, not even nothing. We had a null space. There was a complete absence of nothingness. Then there became a moment of consciousness when there was a realization of limitless nothingness. And in that moment of realization, there was limitless light and the words, I am. Okay? Now, this first source consciousness, it decides it wants to experience itself. So it splits into two. We'll call them the first king and the first queen. The first king and the first queen get so excited about being separate that they immediately join again and have all kinds of fun, passionate, steamy stuff. Close your ears. Afterwards, the king, quite naturally, falls asleep. The queen discovers that she's pregnant, and shortly thereafter she gives birth to the first prince and the first princess. Now the prince falls into this ethereal plane, the place of thoughts and desires, the place of spiritual communication. The princess falls through this abyss that we'll talk about. She falls so far, she falls to the material plane, she falls to earth, she hits her head, and she doesn't remember who she is. Now the prince knows that in order to become the king, he has to rejoin with the princess, but she doesn't remember who she is. But with the prince's help, she is starting to remember. And that's basically the essence of the Qabbalah. That's the basic story of the Qabbalah. If you remember that as we go through all this stuff, that will make things seem a lot easier. Any questions so far? Okay, good. All right. Now we're going to start with a little exercise. So let's just relax. Shake it all away. Okay. And close your eyes. Now this is called the fourfold breath. So take a deep breath and hold it. Breathe out and pause. Now breathe in again. Visualize the light of pure being, pure simple existence flowing into you. Hold and let that light change to become a body of water in which your desires exist. Okay, breathe out. Visualize your thoughts flowing through the air into the world of manifestation. And as you hold, visualize those thoughts sparkling on the earth like points of light, manifesting your desires. Breathe in again. Visualize the light of pure being flowing into you, and in your mind say, I am. Hold, and in your head say the words, I desire. Release the breath and visualize your thoughts flowing out and say the words, I feel. Hold and visualize those sparkling thoughts manifesting and say the words, I release and receive. Breathe in. In your head say the words, I am. Hold. And in your head say, I desire. Release. I feel. I release and receive. Once more, breathe in. I am. I desire. Release. I feel. And relax. I release and receive. Okay, breathe normally. Come on back. All right, we're going to come back to that. There's different ways of doing that. That's called a fourfold breath, and there's different things that you can associate with it, but they all mean the same thing in the end. For example, you can breathe in and think yod. Hold it and think hey. Breathe out and think vo. Hold it and think hey again. That's the name of God. Sometimes you would think spring, summer, autumn, winter. Other times fire, water, air, earth. But there's a specific reason why we're doing it this way, and that's because I wanted something that is going to be more meaningful without having to have previous knowledge of all this other stuff that's tied into Qabbalah. Okay? So, anybody not have one of these? There's one for you, one there.
You didn't print one out for your thing?
No, I don't need one. I'm going to write it up here. So this image, this is the essence of the Kabbalah. This is called the Tree of Life. And the Tree of Life is a series of spheres. There's actually 10 spheres. Although it looks like there are 11 there are not. That 11th one, or the purple one, you see the second one down called Darth. I'm going to come to that. It's not really a sphere, it's more of a placeholder. So think of it as 10 spheres. They call them Sephirah, or Sephiroth, in the singular. Now, the first sphere is called Keter, or Kether, or whatever else you can come up with. And it represents the crown. Kether is the source. It exists in the world of emanation. It's that thought, I am. Okay? Some call it the Godhead or just God. In the Old Testament, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, very first thing in the Old Testament, it says, in the beginning, the Elohim created heaven and earth. Elohim. El means deity. L-O is the feminine form of deity in the singular. I am at the end of it is the masculine plural. So what we're talking about with the word Elohim is this masculine, feminine, singular, plural source deity, or consciousness is a better word. I prefer the word consciousness. So in essence, the Elohim is the consciousness of all of us. It is one consciousness that contains everything, and that's the key to Keter, which is we shall label number 1, known as the crown. Keter represents that in every single thing in the universe, every other single thing is contained. Because with this one source, all is contained within it. There is no desire because you have everything. There is no concept of you because there is only I. Right? This is the first Sephiroth called Keter. Now, Keter also represents the will. Before you have anything else, you have to have the will. Sorry, there's all kinds of jokes that just flew in my head there, and I'm going to let them go. But John's a lawyer if you need the will written up. Sorry, one slipped out, what can I tell you? Okay, so there are 4 worlds that we're going to talk about. The first world is the world of emanation, which represents the will, and it's represented by fire. So that's why we have all this fiery, warm light coming into us. When we breathe in on the first breath, the fourfold breath, that is where we're bringing in the whole universe into ourselves, as if we come back to that single point and we're saying, I am, which represents we are, but in one single sense. And there's a purity to that we're going to need when we go through the blood-brain barrier. The spiritual blood-brain barrier. You have any idea how hard it is to say that 3 times fast? Blood-brain barrier. Okay, so the next 2, remember we talked about the story of the king and the queen? Here's the king, and here's the queen. 2 and 3. And the king is, well actually I'll label Kether up here like that. The king is spelt Chokmah. Sometimes it's pronounced Hokmah, or Hokmah, or any other word you want to use because it's completely irrelevant. And then we have Binah, which is the feminine. The first mother, the first queen, whatever you want to call it. Now, Chokmah represents wisdom. And it also represents something very important. It's the first time we go from I am to you are. It's the first time that there is a difference in the consciousness. Because before, everything was contained within it. Well, now we've separated it out a bit. We've broken it down into 2 pieces. It's the first time we can look at something else and say, that's not me, that's you. Okay? So that's what you get with Chokmah. It also represents the male aspect, and we're going to talk about the pillars too. Bainar is the cosmic mother. Oh, by the way, these notes that I am so diligently reading from here from time to time, I will publish them on your website. So you don't have to write if you don't want to. Okay. Bainar, what am I saying? This is understanding. Now, there are, I'm not going to talk about these very much, but there are 10 Sephiroth, like we talked about, and they are linked together by these things called paths. There are 22 paths separate from the spheres themselves, and those 22 paths are represented by the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Just as a piece of trivia for you. Now, Bainar is the counterpart and counterbalance of Hukmar. Where Hukmar is the force, Bainar is the form. It's the first feminine. It's also the first time that you have an energy circuit, because if you think of Hukmar as positive, Bainar as negative, now you have a difference, and so you can start moving energy around. And the whole universe is created on energy. Very important, remember that, just energy. And black stuff. These guys cannot exist independent of one another. One without the other is incomplete. So this together is called the supernal triad. There's two other triads. It's tri because there's three of them. Now within the sphere of Kether all is contained, so there is nothing to desire. But Hukmar and Bainar represent the first separation of one piece of our consciousness from the other. So for the first time, desire is possible, because this may contain things that this doesn't, and vice versa. Now this is what I like. Another way to look at Hukmar and Bainar is to see them as the quantum world. They are the essential energies that create the foundation of the universe. Remember, pure energy. Wasn't that in a song? Pure energy, yeah. And that was Spock saying it, wasn't it, from a Star Trek thing?
Really?
Yeah, yeah. See? God, we're such a bunch of geeks. Not you guys, just us. Maybe you. Okay. So the first thing I understand is the universe is one big difference engine, moving energy between these two places, like a storm front, if you like. You have a high pressure system and a low pressure system. The storm gets created as the air moves between those two pressure systems. This is our weather, if you like. This is the universal weather. All right, time for our second exercise. What I'd like to do, either on your notepad or on the back of that piece. Does anybody not have a pen? And I should have thought about that. Okay. It's time for us to share pens.
I've got something to say.
Okay, yeah. What we're going to do, I want you to write down something you desire. Okay. Thank you, Connor.
Oh, sorry.
Now, when I say desire, the same as this is something that you do not really have in your life at the moment. Not a need, a desire. Not a want, a desire. Well, you're going to need to, when you've written it down, we're going to pin it down to one word. And that one word is going to be part of this little exercise that we're doing. Okay? Who needs pens still? We've got more pens here.
So what's the difference between a want and a desire?
The difference between a want and a desire is a want implies that there is a reality. When you have a want, you create the reality of wanting. You don't create the object itself. Desire is purer, and we're going to talk about that when we cross over the spiritual blood-brain barrier. Why can't I come up with a different term? The spiritual blood-brain. The BBB, the triple B. We'll talk about the triple B and how desire is purity, because there is the desire for it, but you also release the desire. With a want, you maintain the want, and that's where you get into trouble. So we're going to talk about this in terms of desire. Now, it's okay if it is something, I know I shouldn't really say this, but it's okay if it's something you want, because we're going to talk about how we get rid of that block to get you what you want. I'm kind of leaping ahead here, but if it's easier for you to think in terms of want for now, that's okay. All right, because we're going to separate it later on. We're going to break the bone. It's going to be okay. All right, so does everybody have their word or words? You can 2 words if you need to. Think of something that you desire or want that you don't have right now, and write it down. And then find a way to put it into 1 word or 2 words if necessary that means something to you. Now when you've done that, I would like you to, on further down the paper, maybe halfway down, because you're going to need the top piece to write your little notes of what we're doing, and then you'll need the bottom section here for the finished product. And we need 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you label them 1, 2, 3, 4, that will be easier.
I'm confused.
You're confused. Okay, take your piece of paper here, mark it thus, write your scribbly bits about your desire up here, and then down here label 1, 2, I can't do this upside down, 3, 4, like that. Is that good? Sorry. Do I need to separate you two?
You're cheating already.
It's like that checking account commercial. Are you
Okay.
copying? It's the whole idea of individualized work here.
All right, on number 1, I would like you to write, I am. Simply that.
Is it we're creating desire jambalaya?
Yes. Well, after all, it's our world. So why not? You can copy. There's no right or wrong answer. So.
Oh, I am is number 1.
I am is number 1. Yes. Okay. On line 2, I'd like you to write I desire, followed by your word or words. Okay. We good? All right. So these first 2 worlds, this is the world up here of fire, of the will. These 2 here represent the world of creation and desire and water. This is why when we're in the hold pattern of the first breath, visualize the world of water and your desires flowing within that realm. Okay. Fire and water. There's something else they represent too. You can't see or touch these. In a sense, they represent the quantum world. We're going to talk about the physical universe in the next bit, but before you go, in order to go from the quantum world to the physical world, the Newtonian classical world that we have, there's a thing called the Planck scale. Planck scale is, things go squarely below the Planck scale, and above the Planck scale is where you can kick stuff and everything works fine. It's just a measure of size going smaller and smaller. There is a piece on the tree which you have marked as a sphere, which isn't truly a sphere. The purple thing, look at it. Yeah, this one here, it says abyss on either side of it. This is called Darth. Now Darth represents knowledge. It really isn't a sphere.